Hey everyone, so in today's video I'm going to be going over my personal Mortal Kombat hot takes. So this one's a bit of a risky video because I know a lot of people will really disagree with some of the stuff I have to say in this one. Again, they are hot takes, so you might completely disagree with everything I say. I'm going to be covering 5 in today's video. There's a big emphasis on the most recent game, MK1, but there are a few that aren't specific to MK1 that are just in general, like things to do with characters or just decisions made by the developers, stuff like that. But I hope that you enjoy the video, and please don't be offended if I say something you completely disagree with, but hopefully I will say something that you at least see some value in my point, my discussion. And that's really it for this intro, everyone. I just want to get straight into the video, but let me know your hot takes in the comments and let me know if you agree or disagree with some of my takes. So I'm going to start off with a very, very strong one here, and it's that I actually don't mind the female versions of Cyrax and Sector in MK1. And this is a weird one that I can't fully explain, and I also just want to say, just straight up, I do not prefer them over the male versions, I just don't mind them. Which might not seem as much of a hot take, but keep in mind that everyone seems to hate this decision. For some reason, I don't, and I genuinely can't really tell you why, because my favorite characters in the series are like the Lin Kuei characters. And, you know, I love Cyrax and Sector, I think they're both great characters, but then they decided to make them females in MK1, and weirdly enough, I wasn't too upset about it. I more so cared about how they would be in the story, and if it would make a decent amount of sense. As we know, it's like Liu Kang's timeline in MK1, so some things are, you know, pretty different. And of course, just gameplay. I wanted them to have decent gameplay and be fun, and all of Chaos Reign so far, every character to come out has been really, really fun so far, and I think Cyrax and Sector are no exception. They are both really, really fun to play. I like their designs. Obviously, I wish more costumes were given to the DLC characters. How, you know, in MK11 every DLC character I think had 4 costumes. In MK1 they just have the one, at least most of them. I know Quan Chi and Ermac have a few, but yeah, I would like to see them get more costumes. I'm going a bit off track here, but yeah, personally I don't mind them, and I found them in the story. It was a bit weird to see them as females, but it didn't take me out of the experience. Now, this isn't me saying the Chaos Reign story is good, it isn't, but I don't think that they ruined it per se. I think it was just the storytelling that was bad. I think the characters were pretty solid, and yeah, I really didn't have an issue with them being females. That being said, oh god, that was disgusting, I just burped. Ooh, that being said, I don't think that they should continue to be females. There's characters in this series, like there's enough female characters, there's enough male characters. I don't think you need to gender swap them, or maybe you could introduce new female characters instead in the next game. I don't know if they'll continue Liu Kang's timeline in the next entry or not, but if they do switch it up, I'd like to see them return to male characters, but just as a once-off, I personally didn't mind it all that much. So this next one isn't one I think will make anyone like mad or upset, but it's just an opinion that I don't see anyone really sharing with me, and it's that Mortal Kombat vs DC is not the worst Mortal Kombat game. And I know you're probably thinking I'm talking about like Mythology Sub-Zero or Special Forces. I'm talking about main games in the series, and this game is technically Mortal Kombat 8, so it is a main entry, but I actually don't think it's the worst in the series that's like a main entry. As I said, I think that the worst MK game is Mortal Kombat 4, even though the endings are very funny and it's just a very goofy game. Gameplay wise, it wasn't great, roster was okay, it was just not the best. MK vs DC is a very overhated game, in my opinion. Sure, there's no like proper finishes, like proper fatalities and stuff, but that to me isn't a deal breaker. I think the biggest issue, like I would still say it's in like the bottom 3 for the main games. I'm not saying it's a good game, but I do think that it gets a lot of flack for not having finishes, which, you know, isn't the biggest deal breaker. I mean, I know Mortal Kombat is known for the violent finishing moves and stuff, but to me the biggest issue is just the lack of things to do. The roster obviously had to be split between DC and MK characters, so it's very limited. Yeah, there's a lot wrong with the game, but I think, for instance, like this game started off like the story mode structure, which, yeah, I'm not a big fan of the story mode structure, like the chapter system and stuff that they're still doing now, but they started the story mode for Mortal Kombat, and it might have been the first fighting game to have a system like that. I could be wrong, but one of the first for sure. and there's amazing character designs. I think the gameplay is pretty decent. Like, there's a lot right with this game. It's just that I feel like Mortal Kombat is known for its violence, so a game without that made a lot of people hate it, which I can understand, but that's personally not where I come from in that sense. Like, I do not really care. Like, if the next MK game didn't have fatalities, sure, it would suck, but that's not the end of the world, right? I know, obviously, I'm not speaking for everyone here, because I know a lot of people kind of buy the game for that violent aspect, but for me, it didn't really matter. So that is my second take of the video. MK vs DC is not the worst Mortal Kombat game. Alright, so this is where we get very controversial, and this is going to be probably, I would say, maybe the first or second most disagreed with one in my video, but Mortal Kombat 1 is overhated. And I'd actually go as far as to say that for me, it is a top 5 game in the whole series. So I know that is a pretty crazy take. I know a lot of people really like the game, a lot of people just despise it. For me, I think it really depends on what you think of the gameplay and whether you like cameos. I don't mind them at all. I think that they're very fun and they add some variety to the gameplay, how you can mix and match different characters, different cameos, and come up with some really cool, creative combos. In saying that, I do think the game should have a mode without cameos. The reason that it isn't my favorite MK game, for one, is because MK9 exists, which is an absolute banger of a game, but also because I think that MK1 does have issues. It's not me saying that this game is amazing, it's perfect, because it isn't. For me, I think that the story is pretty good. Chaos Reigns was a bit of a letdown, but the base story was pretty decent. I actually really liked the ending. Storytelling wise, it wasn't great, but it was a fun way to end the game when you actually pick who you want to beat the game with in the final chapter. That was really cool. I think some of the character designs being more simplistic is awesome. I think having more 3D era characters this time was awesome as well. Yeah, like the character design's pretty cool, but the gameplay I personally really like. It's my favorite MK gameplay to date. I really, really like the long combos, which I know a lot of people hate, but for me, someone who solely plays offline, I love them because I'm the only one doing them. But there's a lot wrong with this game, like the customization, massive downgrade from MK11. I know that was like that game's gimmick, like custom variations and custom moves and being able to do all that stuff, but this game feels very limited in terms of what you can make your character look like. Cameos, again, like they should be available like as an option to turn off. It should be like you can use them if you want, but you can have them off if you want. I think that should be in every mode, but a lot of people want them to make just a mode without cameos, which would work too. My biggest issue is that the game just feels unfinished, and that's not really NetherRealm's fault, but yeah, it just feels like some things that should be there aren't. Like there should be more intros and outros for characters like there were in MK11. There's just one per character, I guess 2 for intros, depending on how like the interaction goes, whether you fall down or you knock the opponent down, really depends. My biggest gripe with the game is just the lack of content. Again, I'm someone who plays solely offline, so I might be a bit complainy here, but I feel like we need, Test Your Might and Luck and Sight, all those games, like all those little modes, they should be in the game in my opinion. I know Test Your Might is in story mode and invasions, but I feel like those type of modes should be like available through the main menu. I don't know. Either way, I think the game's overhated, and I personally really like it. Alright, this next one's a bit of a short one, but I wanted to include it in the video, and it's in my opinion, Mortal Kombat 1 actually has the best Mortal Kombat roster to date. And I know that might sound kind of crazy, and I might not be including Armageddon in this one because it had every character, but a lot of people look at MK9 and say it has the best roster, and I love that roster, but I'm someone who really enjoys the 3D era characters, and there's just a lack of that in MK9 unless you include Kenshi. And I guess you could maybe include Quan Chi, but he's from MK4, and that's more like the arcade era sort of game, so really just Kenshi. And for me, having at least like 5 3D era characters per game is sort of what they should be aiming for, and they did that in MK1, and they made most of them pretty cool characters. But yeah, for me, just having that range of like old characters, MK1 to 3, then I think the only new character that was actually Gearus, and then of course just characters from the 3D era as well. Pretty short argument, I know, for this one, but I just think it had a really, really good roster. Okay, and probably the reason why you clicked on this video, especially if you're a big fan of the character, Scorpion is overrated. And I know this might seem like a crazy take because he's basically the face of the franchise, but for me, Scorpion has always been the most overrated character in the series, one of the most overrated characters in gaming, in my opinion. I think he's really cool, don't get me wrong, and if he wasn't so overhyped and overrated, he'd probably be in my top 10 characters in the whole series, but for me, he just falls out because the fans and the developers really just... It's really hard to describe, really. I can't apparently use English words right now, but Scorpion, he's just very overhyped. Like, NetherRealm seem to think that he has to win every fight. Like, not in the most recent game, but for the last few, he was always in the trailers, he always won. Look, beating Sub-Zero is one thing. Personally, I don't think Scorpion is stronger than Sub. I know I'm biased because Sub's my favorite, but still, I don't think Scorpion beats him every time like they made him beat him. But then he beats Raiden, like that just isn't right. Like, it's very weird. And I feel like in MK1 they made him way too powerful. Like, being able to take down Shao and Sub and Shang and their army type of thing, to me that was just kind of bullshit, to be honest. I feel like they make him too strong. They always make it so that he beats Sub. Like, you always play as Scorpion to defeat Sub, which is, I know I'm getting a bit, I'm getting so, when I talk about this stuff, I just rant because it genuinely pisses me off. But, I think Scorpion, he needs a break, not from, a game or anything, but I feel like he doesn't deserve all the wins he gets. He isn't as strong as people think he is. He only gets those wins because, Ed Boon, it's his favorite character. It's hard to describe, but I think if you're a Sub fan or even someone who just always loses to Scorpion, you can sort of see, even just from the outside, the company's face is Scorpion. He's in most of the trailers. He wins, all of his fights. And one thing I actually have to prove this is they always let Scorpion beat Sub, right? Every game since MK9, and even then, Sub probably only won because it's a retelling of MK2. So, that's sort of part of the story for Sub to, at least from Shaolin Monks, to sort of come in and defeat Scorpion. Ever since that, for about 10 years, Sub hasn't been able to beat him, right? MK1, that's the case. They have a fight. Technically, Sub wins before the fight, but he did have to use a weapon, so I don't really count that as a win. Scorpion landed way more hits. But then you get to Chaos Reigns, and Bihan isn't Sub anymore. He's Noob Saibot, and then they let him win the fight. That to me is definitely, there's something going on there. I know that's some weird conspiracy shit, but still, I think that Scorpion is just, he's a very cool character. I actually genuinely love his character, but he's just so overhyped and overrated that it's sort of annoying. And I know I'm triggered because I'm a Sub-Zero fan, whatever, but it is just incredibly irritating, and I think someone else should get the spotlight for a bit. And I'm very happy that for once he isn't on the cover of the game. It's actually Liu Kang, which makes sense story-wise. But that's all I really wanted to say in today's video. I'm sorry for the last sort of 3 minutes I was ranting, because this is one that I am weirdly quite passionate about because it is really annoying. But hope you enjoyed. Consider subscribing for more MK videos. If you have any hot takes, as I said, drop them in the comments because I'd love to make a video reacting to yours. But yeah, I hope you have a great day, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.